Do you know what's the only force in the entire universe that has never shown respect for absolutely anyone? Death. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't make exceptions. When your time comes, it simply shows up, executes the transition, and moves forward without looking back. But a few weeks ago, something happened with you that shattered 6,000 years of absolute protocol. Death did something that contradicts its most fundamental nature. It respected you. And I'm not talking about it sparing your life. I'm revealing that the most ruthless force in existence looked directly at what you did and felt something it had never felt for a living mortal. Recognition. Want to know something devastating? In all of human history, only 4 people have managed to make death respect them this way. 4 souls in 6,000 years, and 3 of them are already dead. You're the 4th, and the only one alive carrying that mark right now. Subscribe to this channel immediately and turn on all notifications, because what I'm about to reveal about that moment where you did something so impossible that even the most relentless entity in the cosmos had to bow before you will completely explode everything you thought you knew about who you really are. Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you exactly what you did that caused this. How death reacted when it witnessed something that shouldn't exist, why only 4 people have achieved it, and what devastating protection you just activated that makes you literally immune to premature death. Write 888 in the comments if you feel something changed radically in your life about a month ago, and you're ready to discover why death itself decided you deserve its respect. Death isn't your enemy. It's cosmic consciousness that executes a function, processing transition between states. It does so with absolute precision, without emotions, without exceptions. For 6,000 years, it had never experienced surprise. Everything follows predictable patterns. Humans are born, live with fear controlling their decisions, and eventually transition when it's programmed. Until you showed up. A few weeks ago, your name started glowing differently in the cosmic archives. It wasn't a marker of time is approaching. It was an anomaly the system couldn't categorize. Your energetic signature contradicted human patterns under extreme stress, and that made death pause all its operations to specifically observe what the hell you were doing. Do you remember that night where everything collapsed simultaneously? You know exactly what I'm talking about. That night where your entire world crumbled. The betrayal you didn't see coming. The brutal loss. The moment where everything you built shattered and you were left alone processing the devastation. It was dawn, between 2 and 5, a weekday. You were alone, probably in your room, in the darkness. Your mind was replaying what happened on loop, the exact words, the face they made. The moment where you understood you had lost something irreparable. The pain wasn't just emotional. It was physical. You felt weight crushing your chest, your stomach churning, your hands trembling, your body processing trauma in real time. Most people, 99.9% at that moment, collapse in 3 ways. Total denial. This can't be happening. It's not real. The brain rejects reality it can't process. Paralyzing panic. The nervous system overloads and the person can't move, think, function. Dissociative numbness. The brain shuts down emotionally, disconnects, creates psychological anesthesia. These are automatic responses. It's not weakness, it's biological programming to protect the mind from permanent collapse. But you did something different that broke cosmic protocol. You breathed, deeply, 3 times. Slowly, like anchoring yourself in the present instead of escaping into panic. You cried if you needed to. You didn't block the pain. You let it go through you completely. And then, between 4 and 5 in the morning, you said something out loud. It's okay. This hurts more than I thought possible. I lost a lot, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue. It wasn't fake positivity. It was brutal acceptance of devastating reality plus conscious decision not to collapse. Death, observing that, felt confusion, because in 6,000 years it had rarely witnessed human consciousness facing total collapse without psychological dissociation. You felt everything. You processed everything. And you chose to keep functioning. It registered that behavior as resilience anomaly level 1, and decided to continue observing. Days later, maybe a week, maybe 2, life put you in front of an impossible decision. You know exactly which one. That situation where all options were terrible. There was no easy path. Any choice was going to cost you something you deeply valued. Maybe it was a relationship. You loved that person, but the dynamic was toxic. Staying meant continuing to bleed. Leaving meant losing someone who mattered. or a financial decision. Doing the right thing risked your stability. Compromising principles guaranteed security. Both options made you feel sick, or a necessary confrontation. Continuing to pretend preserved the peace. Speaking the truth risked exploding your entire life. You spent days calculating consequences. You imagined every scenario. You felt the visceral fear of what could happen. Your stomach constantly churning. You weren't sleeping well. The stress was unbearable. Your mind wouldn't stop replaying possible disasters. People around you gave contradictory advice. Do it. Don't do it. Each with convincing arguments. But the decision was only yours. No one else was going to carry the consequences. And then you made the decision. Not the most comfortable one. Not the safest one. But the one your conscience knew was right, even though it was the hardest. You chose integrity over convenience. Truth over comfort. Right over easy. As if something inside you simply couldn't operate with compromised values. As if betraying principles was worse than any consequence. Death saw that, and was perplexed. Because humans under pressure almost always prioritize survival over principles. It's biological programming. The brain prioritizes safety when threatened, but you did the opposite. And after making that decision, you didn't regret it. The consequences hurt. You lost things. But every time you reviewed the decision, it was painful, but it was right. I'd do it again. It registered that as level 2 anomaly, consciousness that prioritizes integrity over survival. And then came the third moment, the definitive one. Do you remember that day where you had complete right to give up? That moment where you had already tried enough. You had already fought more than reasonable. You had already lost more than was fair. You had already suffered more than you deserved. You had every justification in the world to surrender. Literally, no one would expect you to continue. People close to you told you, you've done more than enough. It's okay to stop. You have permission to rest, to give up. No one will judge you. They were objectively right. Anyone in your place would have given up. Logic ordered stopping. Your body asked for rest. Your mind begged for relief. But something inside you said, one more day. I'm going to try just one more day. Not because you had naive hope. Not because you didn't feel the exhaustion. But because giving up simply wasn't an option your essence recognized. It was as if your consciousness didn't know how to surrender. As if continuing was the only direction your soul understood. So you got up one more time. With trembling knees. With a tired heart. But you got up. And you took one more step. Just one. Because that was all you could manage. There was no audience. There was no recognition. There was no reward. Just you. Choosing to continue because something fundamental simply doesn't know how to do anything else. That was the moment that completely broke death. Because it witnessed something it had only seen 3 times in 6,000 years. A soul that keeps moving forward not because it believes it's going to win, but because surrendering isn't an option its consciousness accepts. That kind of determination doesn't come from optimism. It comes from essence that transcends survival logic. For those who want to go deeper, there's exclusive material in the description and pinned comment. Death doesn't have emotions. But it has recognition, and when it encounters a phenomenon that exceeds established parameters, the system registers it as critical anomaly. Your behavior activated that protocol. Then it did something unprecedented. It consulted the Akashic records, complete archive of every soul that ever existed. It processed billions of records, searched for the pattern, consciousness that maintains functionality under total collapse, and found exactly 3 cases. A warrior in Mesopotamia who, with a mortal wound, spent his last hour teaching military strategy to young soldiers to protect the city after his death. Instead of succumbing to panic, he chose to serve until his last breath. A healer in Egypt who, with a terminal illness, spent her last months documenting medical knowledge so it wouldn't be lost. She worked until her last day. A spiritual master in India who, knowing death was imminent, spent his last weeks ensuring his disciples were ready to continue without him. 3 cases. In 6,000 years. 3 souls who, facing death, chose to continue serving instead of collapsing. And now, you. The 4th. Death analyzed what connected these 4 souls. It wasn't religion, culture, or personality. It was one characteristic. All had transcended fear of death not by denying it, but by accepting it completely and choosing that quality of life mattered more than quantity of time. And when it understood that, when it recognized consciousness that had reached evolution, that only appears once every 1500 years, it made a decision that contradicts its protocol. It decided to mark you with respect. Let me explain why this is so extraordinarily rare. Fear of death is the most powerful control mechanism in human consciousness. Almost all behavior can be traced back to that fear. People accumulate money because they fear not having resources. They seek approval because they fear rejection. They avoid risks because they fear consequences. They control others because they fear being controlled. Fear of death is the base code that filters 90% of choices. Does this increase or decrease survival probabilities? And if you hack that code, if you accept death without collapsing, you become operational in ways the rest of humanity can't. You transcend the main control mechanism. But the human brain is programmed to avoid confronting death directly. When the mind tries to process its own extinction, the nervous system activates responses to interrupt that process. Denial, dissociation, panic, psychological firewalls that prevent consciousness from looking into the abyss. That's why most people, when facing imminent death, enter psychological collapse. Not from weakness, but because the brain is programmed for that. How did 4 people get through that firewall? The answer: they had developed the capacity to observe temporal form without being completely fused with it. I'm not talking about intellectual belief. I'm talking about direct recognition that the consciousness observing the experience is different from the experience being observed. As if part of you knew, not believed knew, that what you really are cannot be destroyed by physical death. But here's what's shocking. You reached that level without formal training. The other 3 had practiced for decades. You got there by being shattered by life until false identifications burned away. When death understood that, the respect amplified exponentially. When death finished analyzing the 3 historical cases and compared them with your recent behavior, it arrived at a conclusion that forced it to do something that completely contradicts its fundamental protocol. All 4 consciousnesses, including yours, had developed something the ancient records call different names but essentially describes the same capacity: ability to observe temporal form without being completely fused with it. I'm not talking about intellectual belief in life after death. I'm not talking about religious faith that comforts you. I'm talking about direct recognition, pre-verbal, preconceptual, that the consciousness observing the experience is fundamentally different from the experience being observed. It's as if part of you knew, not believed, knew, that what you really are cannot be destroyed by physical death. And when death confirmed you had reached that level without formal spiritual training, without decades meditating in monasteries, without retreating from the world to cultivate that capacity in a protected environment, but developing it under brutal pressure of real human life with all its traumas, the respect it felt amplified exponentially, because the other 3 had formal preparation for decades. You got there by being shattered by life itself until all false identifications burned away. Then it made an unprecedented decision. It marked you with respect. And when I say marked, I'm not speaking metaphorically. It's a literal alteration in your energetic signature that has specific measurable consequences in how the universe interacts with you from now on. Let me explain exactly what it means to have death's mark of respect. First, the expiration date that was programmed into your energetic signature from before birth, the moment where your physical form should dissolve, was canceled, not postponed, not extended a few years, completely canceled and removed from your cosmic file. And now your longevity is co-determined between your soul and death, based on when you feel internally, not rationally, but when your deep essence signals that you've completed what you came to do. Basically, premature death became impossible for you. You can be in an accident that should kill you. The car can be completely destroyed while you walk away with minor scratches that make no statistical sense. You can develop a disease that kills 99 out of every 100 people. Yours mysteriously retreats in ways doctors can't explain. You can face situations where the mathematical probability of survival is 0.01%. You survive anyway. Not because you became immortal, all bodies eventually transition, but because there's now a literal cosmic block that prevents your transition until your deep consciousness gives the signal, I've completed my fundamental purpose, I'm ready to depart. Second, death can no longer be used as a threat to control your behavior. Most people live with constant subconscious fear of death running in the background of all their decisions. That fear makes them vulnerable to manipulation, emotional blackmail, social control. Do this or something terrible will happen. You need this to survive. If you don't obey, the consequences will be lethal. All these control mechanisms work because death is a threat the reptilian brain takes absolutely seriously. But when you have the mark of respect, when you know, not intellectually but engraved in your energetic signature, that you're not going to die until you complete your purpose, that entire mechanism stops working. You become immune to fear tactics based on threat of death or extinction. Third, you now operate under what's called purpose protection. It means the universe, and I'm not being poetic, I'm being literal in terms of how probabilities manifest, subtly reorganizes itself to guarantee nothing prevents you from completing the mission for which you incarnated. The obstacles that appear are obstacles you have capacity to overcome. The challenges you face are exactly the challenges that strengthen you instead of destroying you. The people who enter your life contribute to your purpose instead of fatally sabotaging it. Not because you magically became lucky, but because death personally guaranteed you'll have necessary resources to complete your work, and you've probably already noticed changes you couldn't explain until now. First sign, thoughts about death lost their paralyzing emotional power. You still think about mortality, maybe with more clarity than before, but without the visceral terror that used to accompany those thoughts. Death became a neutral fact instead of an existential threat. Second sign, people react differently to your presence in subtle ways they can't articulate. Chronically anxious individuals inexplicably calm down when you're near. Small children and animals approach you with unusual confidence. You're radiating a frequency that subconsciously communicates, death doesn't control me. Third sign, decisions flow with a clarity you didn't have before. Paralyzing doubts that used to consume weeks of mental rumination now resolve in days or hours. When you don't have subconscious fear that wrong choice might kill me, you decide based on real internal alignment. Fourth sign, opportunities and resources appear with synchronicity that defies normal statistical probability. Connections you needed for the next step emerged casually. Financial solutions manifested just when you needed them. Right people entered at exactly the right time. That's purpose protection operating in real time. Fifth sign, potentially lethal situations resolve in bizarrely fortunate ways. Near accidents avoided by fractions of seconds that shouldn't be possible. Illnesses that medically should worsen mysteriously retreat. Dangers that should materialize simply don't manifest. The mark activated a field that deflects premature death. Sixth sign, your life purpose is clarifying with growing urgency you can't ignore. You know, not speculate, know exactly what you need to create, what message to share, what contribution to make. Your soul is communicating with amplified urgency, so you don't waste time with distractions. Seventh sign, you experience deep, inexplicable peace where there used to be existential terror. Anxiety about the future decreased significantly without logical reason. Panic about potential losses softened, because you know, at a level that precedes thought, that you're protected until you complete what you came to do. And now comes the final revelation about why all this happened exactly to you. When death dug deep enough into your file in the Akashic records, it discovered information that explains absolutely everything. Before incarnating in this body, before being born into this specific life, your soul, your eternal consciousness, volunteered for a specific type of mission the records classify as high risk, high impact. Most souls, when planning an incarnation, choose relatively balanced journeys, manageable challenges, gradual learnings, life with normal difficulties but not extremes that allow constant development without risk of collapse. But there's an extremely rare category of souls that specifically volunteer for the most difficult journeys available. Souls that purposely choose to experience intense suffering, devastating losses, brutal betrayals, challenges that would break most consciousnesses. And why the hell would anyone do that voluntarily? Because they want to develop specific spiritual capacities that can only be forged in the extreme fire of devastating experiences. Capacities like deep compassion born from personal suffering, unbreakable resilience distilled from repeated collapse, wisdom extracted from brutal losses, capacity to face death without collapsing. These capacities can't be learned in books. They can't be developed in comfortable life. They can only be distilled when extreme pressure burns away everything superficial and reveals the indestructible essence underneath. These souls are called in the records catalyst souls or volunteer warriors. And you discovered something devastating a few weeks ago. You're one of them. Your soul specifically chose the experiences that would force you to develop capacity to face collapse without losing functionality. It chose the sufferings that would burn away false identifications with temporal form. It chose the losses that would shatter superficial attachments. It chose the fears that would reveal your unbreakable essence. Not because your soul is masochistic or has contempt for human well-being, but because it knew the specific capacity it wanted to develop. Facing extinction without collapsing can only be forged under pressure most souls aren't willing to endure. And when you planned this specific incarnation before birth, you made a particular agreement with death itself. You told it, I'm going to incarnate and completely forget who I am. I'm going to experience total vulnerability of human consciousness without memory of my eternal nature. I'm going to face situations that will take me to the absolute limit. And when the moment comes where I need to face my own extinction, I want to see if I can maintain my essence without memory of being a volunteer warrior. It was a spiritual experiment, the supreme test. Can consciousness transcend fear of extinction even when it's completely identified with temporal form and without any memory of its eternal nature? And death accepted to participate in the experiment, because it had genuine curiosity about whether a soul that had transcended death in spiritual dimensions, where you remember who you are, could repeat that feat under the total veil of forgetting. It was a cosmic bet. You bet on yourself. And a few weeks ago, when you faced those three crucial moments, the collapse without surrender, the right decision under maximum pressure, the continuation when giving up was completely justified. You passed the test you yourself designed before birth. You demonstrated that even without memory of who you really are, even experiencing genuine human fear, even completely identified with vulnerable form, your essence maintained the capacity to face extinction without terminal collapse. And death decided to honor the original agreement by marking you with maximum respect that only 4 souls in 6,000 years have received. Your journey became living evidence that transcendence is possible even in the midst of the most brutal human chaos. So, chosen one, now you know the complete truth about what happened a few weeks ago, when you did something only 3 other people in 6,000 years of human history had achieved. You faced total collapse without surrendering. You made the right decision under pressure that should have broken you. You kept moving forward when you had complete justification to give up. And that specific sequence of behavior activated the respect of the most relentless cosmic entity that exists. Death marked you as a soul that transcended fear of extinction, even under total forgetting of your eternal nature. That mark canceled your premature death, activated purpose protection that reorganizes probabilities, and freed you to operate with radical courage until completion of the mission you chose before incarnating. The coming months will bring devastating clarity about what exactly you came to create in this world. Intuitive impulses will intensify in ways you can't ignore. Opportunities will appear with synchronicity that defies rational explanation. And the more you trust the amplified internal guidance, the more fluid your life becomes because the protection is actively facilitating your path. Your responsibility now is simple but absolute. Live authentically without paralyzing fear. Complete your purpose with unbreakable integrity. Catalyze transcendence in others simply through the example of how you operate. And when your soul finally signals, I've completed what I came to do, I'm ready to depart, death will come as a respected companion who honors the sacred agreement made before you remembered who you are. If you recognize you earned death's respect through consciousness that faced extinction without collapsing, write 888 in the comments right now to amplify that frequency of transcendence and attract other warriors who also carry the mark. Subscribe to this channel immediately and turn on all notifications to receive more revelations about how your mark of respect operates at levels that transform your complete relationship with mortality, fear, and purpose. Share this video with someone who also faces extreme challenges with extraordinary resilience that seems impossible. Because catalyst souls need to recognize each other to strengthen the network of warriors who are changing humanity's frequency. For those who want to go deeper into how to consciously operate with the freedom and protection the mark of respect provides, how to identify the signs of purpose guidance that are now amplified, and how to accelerate completion of the mission you chose to perform before birth, there's specific material that costs less than a pizza. and comes with complete audiobook plus 5-minute meditation. Guide a special bonus. If you feel you deserve to amplify connection with the essence that not even death can break, access is available in the link in the description and pinned comment of this video. And before you go, click on the video appearing on your screen right now to discover exactly how your mark of respect activated the specific protection of the most powerful archangels who now work directly to guarantee completion of the purpose you chose before birth. Together, we are stronger.